Where do you see the property market ending in 2025 or over the next kind of 12 months? My social media presence in the news and all that, it's focused around the finance. So I see these things on a day-to-day basis. And then when I talk to people, often they haven't seen certain things or things haven't been available to them.
We want to think more longer term. Okay, what's your actual goal? Where do you want to be in 5 years? How many properties do you want to own? For a lot of people, they've got a lot of equity in their house, right? But a lot of people also don't know how to actually make use of the equity that's grown in their property to say, set themselves up for the future and buy their first investment property. Like a lot of people just doesn't know that exists.
Welcome to another episode of Founders of Finance, where every episode we dig deep into the insights that shape financial success in Australia. We have the real conversations with business owners, investment experts, accounting professionals, financial lawyers, and everything in between to bring you real-world stories and insider insights to understand the finance world today. Whether you're a small business owner, an inspiring investor, or simply looking to strengthen your financial foundations, there's something here for you. I'm your host, Ross Pocock, co-founder of Sternlight Financial. And today I'm joined by Isaac Skinner, the founder of Source and Secure, a property buyer's agent servicing Brisbane and Logan, and he specialises in finding client investment properties and development sites to help clients build their real estate portfolio. He prides himself on his dedication to his clients. So let's jump into this. Welcome, Isaac. How are you today?
Mate, I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me on. I'm very keen to chat all things property, mate, as lots of Australians do, right? It's a favourite thing for us.
It definitely is. It's a cornerstone of many people's financial plan and their wealth. And obviously, how have you found in the last 12 months within the property industry?
Mate, it's been good. It's been a journey. I think if you're anyone who's sort of been following along the property market, especially here in southeast Queensland, it's all happening in this part of the world and in this part of Australia. I think I was just reading a report this morning that was showing, I think on average, Brisbane house prices grew like over 11% just in the last 12 months. So there's a lot of investors out there winning, and that's just a pretty broad percentage as well, right? So that's not even specific suburbs that have maybe grown more than 11%, which some of our buyers have. So 11%, pretty much, if you just bought a property, you've got a lot of equity in your house now. So it's been good. Stock's been tight. So one of the challenges for us has probably just been finding the right properties for the right clients. But a lot of it's also, with that, is just being patient and finding the right opportunities. For us, we talked to some people who are very excited to buy yesterday, and they're very ambitious, which is fantastic. But I always say, hey, sometimes the first property we find is the right one, but sometimes it's not. So patience is a virtue sometimes in actually finding the right opportunity. Because, yeah, you don't want to jump in, make the wrong buy just for the sake of buying something. So we're being pretty careful with our buys, especially because, of the low stock. So to sum it up, I guess the last 12 months has been very much low stock, high demand, and bit of fighting in the middle, but that's what we do best.
No, definitely. I definitely highlight that to a lot of my clients in that sense of it's not always necessarily about just jumping into the first property. The broad headlines suggest all properties gone up in value, but I know if we look at a lot of apartments in the Brisbane area are actually either holding steady or dropping in value. So it definitely is about finding that right property. Now, obviously, you're in the buyer's agent industry there, and this might be relatively new to a lot of people. So if I think back 4 or 5 years ago, there was not buyer's agents within the industry. So where has this explosion come? Can you give me an explanation of what a buyer's agent is, and where do you think the market's going within the buyer's agents realm?
Mm. Yeah, great question. And you're right. I think a lot of our job at the moment is education around what we actually are. Because, I mean, when I started out my own business, 2 years ago, half my family was like, what the heck is a buyer's agent? I don't even know what that is. So a lot of it is actually like explaining what it is. And I will. So essentially, if you think of a real estate agent, everyone, especially in Australia, has in their minds, oh, a real estate agent sells my house, right? Like I engage them to list it, put it online, do all the marketing, and find the right buyer. So we're technically real estate agents as well, but we're buyer's agents. So if you think about the inverse of that, we're here as your buyer's advocate to actually help you go out and find deals and negotiate on your behalf, to find the right deals and to actually make sure that you buy the right property for the right price, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
So in that there, when you're
mm,
talking about negotiating on behalf of the person buying, um,
mm,
the market has very much been focused on the seller, and
mm.
so you, you could always call it like left shoulder is the real estate agent selling the property, and you guys are the right shoulder trying to negotiate on behalf of that buyer. Is that correct in my understanding there?
Yeah, correct. And I think, like you're saying, because there's so many more buyers agents coming into the market, and I think the reason that that is because people are seeing the need for representation more, right? I mean, we're talking about you're potentially buying your biggest asset, and some people only purchase maybe three, four, five homes in their entire lifetime, and they're going out and they've only done it once or twice, and they're expected to, make some magic happen to try and get the best deal, but they've only done it once or twice before. You gotta you gotta be pretty careful that you do it right. So I think people are actually understanding that having an advocate and someone who does it every day and finds the best deals for people is actually a super important thing, right? Um, and for us, the proof's in the pudding a lot of the time. Like a lot of our deals, we do buy under, say, what the owner wants for the property, or even, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but even buy like off-market properties and that sort of thing. So people are seeing the need for a buyer's agent more as the market has also been more competitive. You think of the low stock at the moment. People don't necessarily know how to find off-market properties, so that's where we can come and say, hey, we can actually help you find off-market properties because we're doing it every day. We have the networks in the industry. If your average buyer maybe goes to a few open homes on a weekend, they might talk to four or five agents, whereas we've got a database of over 1,000 just in Brisbane, right? It's about having the networks, and people are realizing that more. Um,
Now,
as we,
with that there, while we're on the topic, what does off market mean for our listeners? Because I've explained this to clients previously, and they didn't even realize the off market was a market. They just
Mm,
assumed all property was on realestate.com. So,
mm.
for our listeners, please explain what that means.
Yeah, 100%. And it is becoming a bit more of a loose term, but essentially, what it is, well, let's say your on-market property is your property that is online. It might be on realestate.com, it might be on domain.com. It's accessible, anyone can look at it online. Whereas your off-market properties are properties that aren't necessarily listed on realestate.com. And that might be for a variety of reasons, right? It might be actually a pre-market opportunity we talk about as well. So that's properties that the owners have signed up, say, to a listing agent. They're committed to selling, but they just haven't quite made it to the photo stage yet, and they haven't quite made it online yet. So sometimes we can swoop in between, them signing up and it hitting online and say, hey, we're interested in this property. Can we look at, doing an inspection before it actually goes online?
And I suppose there as well, you get it
Mm.
bit cheaper as well because they're not paying their marketing costs, and they don't have all the photography, everything at that stage.
Yeah, I think for the vendors, it can be a pretty big win in a lot of cases because you don't have to do all that. You don't have to do your marketing. It saves you a bit of costs. You don't have to, open your house for 4 weeks at a time. Everyone loves doing that, right? When you're tiptoeing around the house at 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning. So there's lots of advantages for the vendors. But the other thing as well is the competition component, right? So if we're buying something off market that isn't on realestate.com and we've found that through either a real estate agent has presented that to us, or we've sourced it through an owner directly, or another channel, there's not as much competition, right?
Yep.
Because basically us, and a lot of the time, just the seller. So we're just negotiating on the property one on one, or maybe there's another buyer's agent involved, or another couple buyers. But compared to, say, a normal open home when there's 20 to 30 buyers, and in the past year, if you've been buying property, you'd know that pretty much after the first open home, there's guaranteed to be three, four, five offers on the property. So already you're sort of, struggling to actually be a proper competitor, especially if, you've got finance and that sort of thing can make it tricky as well. So I think doing the off market and just being, one on one with the seller, it gives you a much better chance to actually secure the property, right? Because they're much happy to work with you. And obviously, this is assuming you're being sort of half reasonable on price as well, right? And you're not throwing, 50% of what the property's worth at them because, then they'll just walk away from you. So it's a balance. It's a balance of making them happy and also, making us happy. I always try to achieve win-win outcomes, and that's sort of negotiation 101 sometimes, right? You give a little, but you get a little. In
Yeah,
the market.
definitely. And in terms of that, there, do you take control of that negotiation? So you find the property, you talk to either the agent or the owner. You say I've got a client interested, and then what happens from there? Is it do you handle negotiations on behalf of your clients?
Yeah, correct. And I think so. We handle all the negotiations right from, we'll talk to the real estate agent, so our client doesn't really have to interact with them if they don't want to. So we handle that whole process of going back and forth, right through to settlement as well. And I think it's actually good because it removes the client one step from the deal. And I think that's a real positive for a lot of people, especially for your emotional buyers, right? Whether they're a first time investor or whether they're a mum and dad looking for their dream home, emotion does funny things to people a lot of the time, right?
Yes.
Whether it's, paying too much for a property, or, doing some deal that they shouldn't be doing just because they really want a property and they're overlooking some components of it. So, them stepping back out of the negotiation process is a real plus because then there's us who, I mean, there's always some emotional effect, but and I want to say that we don't have as much emotion tied up in the deal, and we can look at a spade for a spade and say, hey, look, I think they actually want too much for this property. I don't think it's worth it. Or maybe, we do a building and pests and there's actually a few major issues wrong, but they want to push on because they like the dream of it. To sort of almost be their reality check a little bit and say, hey, look, there's some issues here that I don't think we can. Well, I don't think it's worth it. I guess in a sense. So having them sort of be one step away from the deal, it's quite effective in a lot of times. Plus, it prevents the buyer mistakes, right? I mean, a lot of buyers will buy something and then they go through the buyer's remorse,
Yeah.
whereas none of our clients have that, right? Because we don't buy the wrong properties a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So all the time. So I think that is a massive advantage for a lot of buyers now. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Now, in terms of that, when you talk about the emotional side, and is that why you focus predominantly on investment properties, development sites, and things? Because the purpose behind those properties is for growth or for income, as opposed to a lifestyle choice where people are actually buying for their
Mm.
family and things like that. Is that the reasons for that separation, or is there other?
Yeah. I think that is definitely one reason. It's funny though, because I work with quite a few first time investors, right? So whether it's like a FIFO worker who's, got a bit of cash and wants to invest it in the Brisbane market or whoever it might be, the young professional, I still find they actually do still have quite a bit of emotion, even though it's still only an investment property, right? But for me, it's a, I guess, like a journey from, start to finish in the fact that they're very emotional at the start, but then by the end, they can see that we're actually wanting to buy something that's going to grow in value, not that is just like super pretty on the inside. Like I'll tell you a story. Like I had one client recently, absolute legends, first time investor, FIFO worker, and he engaged us to help him buy and negotiate his investment property. And at the start, he was sort of saying, "Oh, there's some. I've been looking at opportunities in the city, and it's funny because you said it before, like apartments around like Bowen Hills and even in the Brisbane city that you can pick up for like decently cheap, under a mil still." And I'm sort of educating him a bit. I'm saying, they look good inside, and you can rent them out for a decent amount, and they probably yield okay. But if you look at the chart and the sales history for the last 10 years and the price growth, it's like a wave. It goes up and down, and then that's not what we want to buy, right? Because right now, I think I was looking at it, and it's pretty much on a down trajectory, sort of over the past like last 6 months. So I'm like, just because it looks pretty doesn't mean it's going to make us money. Whereas let's look at something, that's maybe slightly out the city with all the good growth components in a growth corridor, when it's grown, sort of 15% over the past year. plus, our indicators are telling us it's going to grow another 15 to 20 this year. And he's already made like, 10 grand or probably a bit more now, and he only bought it sort of a few months ago. That is a much better investment, and it might not be as pretty, but it's going to make him a lot more money in the long run. Plus,
Yeah.
it's got upside as well, right? So then we can say, look, it's not the best looking apartment, but it's functional, and we bought it slightly under market value, and that's good because now you can put maybe 10 grand, 20 grand into a cosmetic renovation, and you're going to up the value by 50 grand or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like real world values. I think we bought this one for 400 grand, and it was a 3 bed, 1 bath, and it's unrenovated, but like I said, still very functional. And then there was another one in the complex that sold renovated for about 460, I think it was. So it's like, well, you put 10 grand into the property to just do your simple basic stuff, and you're going to increase it by 30, 40 grand, right? So for him, that's a massive win. But it was that education from sort of the inner city unit buying, which probably might look good but isn't profitable. Profitable ain't pretty, is what I say.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny you should say that about our unit. So I had the opportunity to purchase a unit in a recently built apartment block. We're building a few other apartment blocks around it in Newstead. So Newstead is obviously a very inner city suburb, um, good infrastructure around it. And at the time, I believe they were asking around the 520,000, so as a great investment, things like that. Now, if I go back to that area, that whole area is completely new. High rises are going up everywhere. Uh, and those apartments are, more of them are going up for sale again,
Mm,
actually for about 480, 490 now.
yeah, yeah.
And we've had, and this was probably 6, 7 years ago now, and we've had 6, 7 years of unbelievable growth in other property markets, but I don't think the Brisbane market for apartments are quite as developed as the Sydney and the Melbourne market at this stage. New high rises are going up left, right, and centre, so really impacting it in that
Yeah.
way. So
And people get caught up in, the off the plan stuff as well. They get
yeah,
sold the dream, and I see it. And personally, I don't do off the plan just because of the horror stories that I hear, and I don't want any part of that. Some people it's worked really well, but you got to trust your team in what you're doing, sort of, especially when you're buying off the plan, right? But you hear stories of people buying it, say, for 500 grand, and then there's delays in construction, and then once it actually is done, they thought they were going to have all this equity grown because the market would grow in the 12 months or 2 years that they're building it, but it's gone down in value, right? So you're pretty much losing money on a dead deal. So too many stories like that. Plus, like you're saying, there's so much supply, and I think in Brisbane as well, there's some pockets like Newstead. I know in Hamilton as well, the river there. There's another pocket of high rises, and it's just like they congest them all in one area, but then there's too much supply. And obviously, supply and demand, right? If you've got too much supply and not high demand, then the price goes down. Um,
yeah,
yeah, when you're sort of thinking investment properties, I mean, I always say if you can afford to get land, then you should because a lot of the value is in the land a lot of the time. But equally, don't be scared to look at different areas and suburbs. I think people get caught up in I need to have a property in Newstead because of the title of it, and everyone wants to live in Newstead. But it just goes back to what I said. Profitable sometimes ain't pretty. Yeah.
no, I do like that. Profitable ain't pretty. That's it. I think I'll be using that line definitely when I talk to clients when they're looking at investment property in the future. Now, in terms of your process, so obviously no two people are the same, no two properties are the same. So, what is your process? Do you start from you have a meeting, get to know what they're looking for, versus where do you sit in that process? And if you can, kind of I know it's a lot longer process, but kind of talk us from start to finish in a quick run.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so we always start with like a free consult. So I'll just sit down with someone who's looking to buy an investment property or an owner occupier property or whatever it is, and I'll just say, hey, what are you actually looking for? Just to find out whether it's actually doable or not. At the moment, a lot of people are very optimistic until they go talk to a broker or a financial planner, and then the dream of buying $1 million house gets shot because of interest rates and borrowing capacities and stuff like that. So that's what I always do. If they don't have pre-approval, I'll direct them to a broker. A lot of the time as well, if they don't have like a financial plan or they're thinking they've got a few different things, I'll say, go chat to a financial planner as well, just to get these things in place. Because we do like to put strategy in place as well. Like if we're sitting down with a potential investor, we want to create a strategy not just for the first property, but for the third property, right? Because we want to buy properties that are going to grow in value, and then we can actually go back, redraw on that, and buy another one, right? So we're not just trying to buy the first one, but we want to think more longer term. Okay, what's your actual goal? Where do you want to be in 5 years? How many properties do you want to own? And then sort of map that out step by step. So generally, once we do the consult, figure out what we want to do. If when they come on board, then we'll sort of do that process. So we'll go through that strategy, actually roadmap how it's going to look. From there, we'll sort of go to step one on that plan, and then we'll decide, okay, what's going to be best for this step? Is it a land property? Is it a unit slightly out of the city? Whatever their sort of budget and plan can afford as well. So once we've got a good idea of what they're looking for and the price point, then we'll go out and source it. So like I said, we've got, a database of 1,000 real estate agents in Brisbane, right? So we're good at finding the properties. We'll go through, contact these people, do our calls, attend lots of open homes, and find the off-market opportunities. Sometimes it's on market, sometimes they're just there for the taking, which is fantastic as well. Um, but equally, our skill is through the negotiation process as well. So once we find it, we also do due diligence to make sure that there's no skeletons, not sitting in a flood zone. It's not, got some easement over it, or the council's not about to buy back the land right in front of it or widen the road it's on. So we do all the due diligence to make sure that everything checks out and that they're not going to be stitched up in a few years because of something that we missed. So we want to make sure, do all our research, and then obviously go through the negotiation phase, and we'll take care of that for the client. We'll put offers in, and try to get the best outcome and win-win for the clients. And then once it negotiates, we actually also take it through. So once we do the negotiation, it'll go under contract. And once it goes under contract, we take care of the building and pest. We'll make sure and work with your broker when we need to make sure the finance is all okay and whatever other clauses you might have. And then we'll negotiate that, do the building and pest, do the pre-settlement inspection as well, to make sure everything's as it should be. And we're your best friends pretty much for your property process. And then we're with people all the way through to settlement day. So sort of A to Z sort of process. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And it really highlights where your name come from of the company source, and then you secure it all the way through. There's nowhere in between that you don't help them out there. So I do like that. Now, in terms of obviously, we were chatting a little bit off before the recording started here, and regarding the social media aspect. So I've seen your social media side of things, and a lot of that is focused around education, and helping people grow their knowledge and stuff. So what made you jump into social media? Why is it focused more on the education side of things? And where can people reach out to you within that social media side of things?
Yeah, so Source and Secure on Instagram, anyone can find it. So jump on and see what we've got to offer. I got a love-hate relationship with social media. Like I was never really a social media guy previous to running the business. I'm not one to sort of put myself out there, so I've been a bit challenged in that way. Um, but equally, I just quite enjoy, actually educating people and helping people. And even when I'm talking to my mates, after I've posted up a video, like I did one the other day, just talking about some of the government schemes available, like, first home buyers can get into a house with a 5% deposit, no LMI, up to 700K, and they don't have to pay stamp duty. So I did a video just talking about that and how that works. And then I had, a few of my mates even just say, oh, I actually didn't know that was a thing. And I think for me, because I'm in property mode all day, and I know how these things work, I forget that other people actually don't know how it works. So
Yeah.
for me, once I actually break it down and talk about it, I realize you can actually assist a lot of people through that. So for me, that's pretty powerful, right? And the education, just be able to go out, do videos, and yeah, sort of show people how property works, how you can grow your portfolio. Like another one, for example, right? Like a lot of people say bought back in 2020 in Brisbane just before sort of we boomed and grew. I think we've grown like 80% or something like that since 2020, right? It's ridiculous. So for a lot of people, they've got a lot of equity in their house, right? But a lot of people also don't know how to actually make use of the equity that's grown in their property to say set themselves up for the future and buy their first investment property. Like a lot of people just don't know, doesn't know that exists.
You're spot on there in terms of not understanding. Like I get a lot of people, we sit in this world on a day-to-day basis every day. And I'm sure you're similar to me. You also sit on it, even though like I'm passionate about finance, I'm passionate about investing. So I love what I do. So it's not just a 9 to 5 in that sense. I do it after hours. I do it in the mornings. I wake up and um, my social media presence and the news and all that, it's focused around the finance. So I see
Mm.
these things on a day-to-day basis, and then when I talk to people, often they haven't seen certain things or things haven't been available to them, and I think sometimes it's important to remember that, which is one of the things that drew me to your social media. So I used to store you on LinkedIn. I think the first time we interacted, and there was some of those posts, and I found they were very quiet. Quite raw, not overproduced in that sense, because so much on social media is overproduced. It's quite just down to the basic. Here's the facts, and there's nothing.
Yeah.
It's not clickbaited, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think as well, like I'm not trying to sell anything on social media, right? Like I'm purely just there to provide education. Like a lot of guys are, buy my $100 property course or whatever it might be. I'm not like good on them or whatever. I'm sure it's worth it. But for me, I'm just providing free education. A lot of the time I will tell success stories as well, just to sort of show what we do and how we work. Um, but that's just showing people, look, if you want to work with us, come have a chat. But if not, then yeah, here's some help to go buy your house. But I think that's great as well, right? If I can help someone buy their house, and they can go do it themselves from the education that I've provided, fantastic, good on them. Some people don't need a buyer's agent, right? Not everyone needs a buyer's agent, but some people do need tips, and it can really help them in their buying process. But some people look at the stuff we do as well, and they say, I can't do that myself. Isaac, can you help me out? And that's where we can, yeah, really come into our own and assist that person.
Yeah, definitely. I found a big need for buyers agents, especially in people that are very time poor, because they miss out on opportunities because they can't get to the open houses and things like that. That's where I
Yeah.
see a lot of the value there. So, and one final question before we wrap things up here, and this is one that I'm asking you to get out your crystal ball here, because this is what a lot of people ask: is where do you see the property market ending in 2025 or over the next kind of 12 months? Um, yeah, the magic crystal ball that everyone wants to know. And yeah, where do you see it? And that might be different depending on cities. You might go Brisbane this, Sydney, Melbourne this type thing. But yeah, where do you
Yeah.
see it going?
Yeah. I wish I had a crystal ball. I think
Yep,
we'd all make a lot more money if we did, right?
exactly.
But for me, Brisbane and Queensland in general, I can't see it slowing down in the next sort of up until the Olympics, really, in 2032. And I was doing a bit of research and I was looking at, what actually happened in the Sydney market leading up to their 2000 Olympics. And you can see from about the 7 years leading up to it, so 7 years from when was that, 1993 to 2000, their market basically doubled. So for me, I'm looking at it now and I'm saying, well, we're in, Jan 2025 already. It's actually
Seven,
and that's the thing, it creeps up faster than people even realize. It's actually not that far away. What's that? Is that 7 years now, is it?
seven
Yeah.
years now. Yep.
Crazy. It was 10 years, right? Now it's seven. So for me, we're pretty much about to ride that peak. And I mean, history is a very good teacher in a lot of senses, in the fact that you can look back and sort of be able to get a general idea of what's going to happen. Obviously, there's a lot more happening in sort of today's world compared to what was happening back in 2000. But as a general indicator, I think it's definitely going to grow because of the Olympics. You look at all the other things that are happening as well, right? Like Sydney, is also a very strong market. But I think from what I can tell, it has plateaued quite a bit and is sort of sitting very flat at the moment. Melbourne is in a bit of a hole. If anyone's been following that, I think they actually dropped about 3% last year. Um, but the thing is, and this is the funny part, all the Sydney and Melbourne people, they're moving to Brisbane, right? I mean, me and you live here, and we feel the effect on the traffic, right? Like, there's so many more people like around than there was 4 or 5 years ago. It felt like a country town 5 years ago, and now the roads are busy. You can't get down to the Gold Coast without going bumper to bumper. And for me, that is a massive indicator that hey, people are moving here. Our supply is still incredibly low, and our demand is ever increasing. So for me, it always goes back to the supply and demand equation. And you look at it and say, well, there is such low supply, even at the moment, like properties coming on the market as of sort of the past month after Christmas, it's still not really where it should be. And I mean, it's a lot more properties coming to market sort of the last week or so because people are getting out of Christmas mode. But there's still not enough supply for the people buying. And I mean, a lot of people are saying, oh, the market's plateaued a bit. And I do get that. I think there's not as many buyers out there, but the buyers who are out there are still cashed up and ready to buy. And I mean, the property prices haven't gone backwards, I don't think, in Brisbane at all. The other thing to note is with interest rates, I mean, some banks are saying it's going to be in Feb. I tend to think it might be a little bit later than that. But everyone's saying, oh, I'm going to wait for the interest rates to drop and then I'll buy something. And guess what's going to happen? When the interest rates do drop, buyer confidence is going to skyrocket. Everyone's going to be at open homes, and yeah, it's going to be a fun time again. Like it happened, I think it was in 2022 when they dropped interest rates. And the market just absolutely cranked again. So as soon as that happens, I can definitely see it going for another pretty big run. Um, Time will tell, but it's just the way it goes, right? People all of a sudden get eager, they start talking to their broker, they get the approval, and they go out shopping. And the funny thing is, it's like, well, if you bought today for X amounts, chances are the market's going to be that more competitive when the rates go down, that you're going to be buying maybe the same property for a little bit more expensive when you could have just bought it for X amount today, right? So I'm telling people, buy now. It's never going to be the perfect time. The market's been crashing for 30 years, right?
No, definitely. And I do highlight this with a general warning in the sense we don't know your personal situation. So this is Isaac's view. Um, we do recommend people reaching out for that. So I want to thank you for coming on, Isaac. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and I do believe people get a lot of value in understanding what the buy market is. And I'd love to get you on again later on, maybe even 12 months down the track, and review this conversation again. But for the last part here, is there anything you want to plug, anything you want to get out there to the public?
And thanks for having me on. Hey, really appreciate it. It's been great chatting with you, and you're the best financial advisor I know, mate. So if anyone's listening and they need to talk to someone, go talk to Ross. He'll sort you out.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
But I think for us at the moment, like I was saying with the interest rates, the time is now, right? And I don't say that to sell my services. Like I said, I'm the worst salesman, right? Like I just try to help people, and that's sort of how I roll. So if you do want to chat about property and you want a free consult or whatever it might be, we do offer a free consult. So come have a no obligation chat. Come out to Sandgate where I'm based, and I'll shout you a coffee, or we can jump on a Zoom if you're interstate. But like I was saying, interest rates are going to drop later this year. Market's definitely going to go for another run. Obviously, I'm not a financial advisor, but we've seen it happen before, and I think you'd be silly to sort of think otherwise. In that sense, that it has happened before, and it probably will happen again. So the time's never going to be perfect. Like people have been saying, the market's going to crash for 30 years. It has, and even if it does dip a little bit, it always comes back in the end. And the other thing, like I mentioned before, there is a lot of people out, say, who bought their maybe first home, maybe an investment property in 2020, just before COVID, and you have stored up a lot of equity, right? But you're not using it maybe to the best capacity that you should be. And it's not necessarily about just trying to get the most debt that you can, but it's about leveraging that debt to grow your future. I mean, for a lot of people, investment properties and trying to grow a portfolio is actually a lot of their retirement fund and how they're thinking that they're going to set themselves up for the future. So if you can get in earlier than later and actually, realize that, hey, I do have a lot of equity sitting in here. I bought my property for $1 million 5 years ago now, and it's worth, $1.5 million, then that's a lot of usable equity you can use to purchase an investment property. So I'd say just go back, do a review of your finances, see where you're at with things. But it's also about just having a goal in place. So trying to figure out where you actually want to be in, say, 5, 10, 20 years. People go out and they just think, oh, I'll just buy an investment property. But it's pretty important to also have a goal in place so you can actually, utilize the plan that, people will create for you to actually get to where you want to be, rather than just sort of pistol peating it and just sort of picking a property and buying it. So yeah, no massive plug, but if you want to come chat property, feel free to reach out. Sourceandsecure.com.au is our website, and yeah, like we're saying, you can follow us on the socials, just on Source and Secure there, or Isaac Skinner, sort of your property partner, on Instagram as well. So come along for the journey, come say hi. It's good fun. I try to make it a bit lighthearted, but
Yeah. No, perfect. No, that was great. Thank you very much. And as always, guys, like and subscribe to this podcast. And we're trying to grow. We're trying to provide education to everyday Australians. We get more and more professionals on at Founders of Finance, and the more subscribers we get, the more professionals we can get on, and you can get more education. So, and thank you for listening today, and look forward to our next episode. Thanks, guys.